Hello, my name is Nyree and I'm running an adoption support type channel. Today we're going to talk about children with autism and adopting children with autism. I'm going to share my experiences with you of when I fostered a little girl who was undiagnosed with autism but finally was diagnosed with autism. And then I'm going to take you through some of the things that we used to help us while we were parenting her. I have two boys who are 10 and 11 that I've adopted, and previously was a foster carer for complex needs. And so if you think a channel that offers support, tips, advice, shares my experiences and stories could be useful to you, then please feel free to subscribe and you'll know when I'm bringing out my other videos. When we first fostered a little girl who was around 6 years of age, we were put off many times with the suggestion that she may actually have autism. And the reason for this was because of a high level of complex behaviours and traumas and a history of severe abuse. And so from a social care perspective, the likely reason for many of the behaviours was going to be trauma. And my first point to you is, I think that social care do tend to look at trauma and attachment as being the key reason for most behaviours that children come to you with. And of course there is a lot of truth in this. Many of the behaviours will be down to trauma, but not all. And I think this can then lead to some misdiagnosis. Now, this particular child displayed many autistic traits. There was a need to always know what was going to happen every day. There was rocking, there was flapping. She even had some echolalia, which is repetition of adult language. And so when you listened to her, it sounded like she understood everything you were saying, but actually she was repeating what she'd heard. Now, when it came to trying to convince social workers that there may be more than the trauma, this was really difficult to do. But in the end, we were able to take her to an assessment unit where she went for several days, even weeks, I believe, when they came out with a clear diagnosis of autism. So in the end, she had a mixture of autism and attachment disorder. And sometimes, if I am honest, it's a very heady mix to unpick between autism and trauma, because there are so many similarities. One that I can think of and is that children who've been traumatized always want to know what's happened next and always have a high level of control. And of course, so do children with autism. So one of the differences between autism and trauma, when children undergo therapeutic treatment for trauma, they will make some improvement. They may not undo all of the damage, but they will make some improvement. Autism is a childhood condition. It's there to stay and it's the way the brain works. So therapy per se is not going to undo any autism. Autism is something that a parent has to work with and has to have new ways of parenting to be able to face the challenges that they're presented with. And sometimes it's also true to say that girls can be more difficult to identify with autism than boys, and so many girls can go undiagnosed. So what did we do to help us to parent this particular little girl once we had a diagnosis? We went on training and we were able to glean some useful ideas. So there were many ways in which we could help this little girl to interpret the world around her. So my point number one is we found that she often needed to have an adult there to interpret situations around her, particularly emotional situations. Point two is she always needed a plan of the day. She needed to know what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. And point three, we were unable to deviate from this. So once the plan was there, then the expectation from the little girl would be there that we were actually going to follow through. If we didn't follow through, point four, then there would be a major meltdown, because trying to process things quickly and process change is something that I believe autistic children find really difficult. So once we had a plan, we stuck to the plan. And point number five, the day we often broke down into a number of sessions. So when we woke up on a Saturday morning, there would be a plan and there would be perhaps 3 things that we were going to achieve in the morning and 3 things that we were definitely going to achieve in the afternoon. And that way she could work out quite clearly where we were in that day and what was going to happen next. You may need to make this a visual timetable. So obviously you're not going to be able to be specific over the weekends about everything you're going to do, but you might well have representative cards to help that child process the different parts of the day and when things may happen so that they know the routine. My next point for you, point number 7, is when a meltdown happens, it happens. It's similar to a trauma meltdown. You just need to be there for them. So we never made plans really much before the day that we were going to do things. And if I'm honest with you, that's similar with our sons now. We don't really tell them much before it's going to happen so that there isn't any disappointment. Point number 9 is you're not there to explain to others. So you may go to a shop and you may have a child that is autistic or you think is autistic and they're having a meltdown. You don't need to explain to other people around you what's going on. At the end of the day, you're doing your best to parent a child who needs you. So you don't have to explain to others what's going on with them because other people probably won't understand how it is for autistic children. So my final idea for you is as well is that what we found really useful with our autistic child that we had was to make wallets of activities that had starts and finishes. We found that this was really useful for their development, and also because they knew the activity had a start and a finish, then they were really happy with that. So we had little wallets with simple puzzles in and activities and worksheets, and there could always be that they knew when this was going to start and when this was going to finish, and we would get those wallets out and then we'd put them away again. And that's just a tip for you for some nice activity ideas that you can do. If you do believe you have a child with autism or you've had a diagnosis with autism, that's really useful to go on training because then you will be surrounded by people who are in a similar situation to you. Autism is so unique. It's not the same as trauma. It's not the same as other childhood conditions. It's the way that the children think and the way that you need to respond to them. I hope this video helps you, and if it does, please take the time to subscribe because then you will know when I bring out more videos. Thank you for watching.